Good morning and happy holidays. It is Monday, December 21st. I am Jurgen. This is Talent Talk. And joining me today, as we have every Monday, we have, whoever I put in next is going to be the pickle in the middle. Who shall we make the pickle in the middle today? How about Miss Davina Clarity?
Yay! Good morning. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yes. Good morning.
Well, it's time to make you the pickle in the middle because joining us also is yo boy, Steve Chung.
Good morning. Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday.
Oh, man. Who's ready for Christmas? It is Christmas week here coming up this Friday. I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like this whole year is just
right now.
This is like rolled by. Oh my goodness.
I know. I see in your background, you've got the stockings and
by the chimney with care.
Yeah.
I made sure they're small. It's less to fill.
I was wondering if they are actually small or if that was just the perception.
It's less to fill.
I was going to make a comment that, Cole doesn't take up much room, but, I'm sure that is not the case there.
One piece of coal for you, one piece of coal for you.
Well, we've got a good episode coming up here because we've got a great guest today, right?
We do. I mean, with everything that's going on in our real estate market, I mean, this just kind of leads into kind of the way the market has been going right now in regards to investing and buying up. And we're going to be talking about today 1031 exchanges.
Yeah.
And as we kind of lead into that, one of the things that we like to do is start off with a trivia question for
can I do it?
viewers out there. Davina, what do we got today?
Pick me. All right. So today's trivia question is, what is the most common type of 1031 exchange? And you know what? If you don't even know what a 1031 exchange is, then by the end of this broadcast, you will know what a 1031 exchange is, and you might be able to better answer this question. But here are the answers. The choices. Is it a simultaneous exchange, a forward delayed exchange, a construction exchange, or a reverse exchange? And all those things are probably super foreign to a lot of you, but we'll reveal the answer at the end.
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting? I mean, over the past year, how many 1031 exchanges have you seen this past year compared to years prior?
They've definitely picked up.
They have.
And we'll talk about that. And I think that's one of the questions for the guest that's coming on, is to actually explain what actually a 1031 exchange is. But as we're talking about this, it is an investment tool, or it is a tool that's used for investors. So really exciting, because I know I originally got into real estate, because I was interested in the investment side of things. And I know a lot of people get into real estate because of the investment potential. So I think this is an awesome tool that people don't even really think about. That I'm excited for us to dive into this.
It is.
Even for us over here, I mean, we have a lot of, one of our offices is right next to Joint Base Lewis McCord. We have a lot of military families that come through, and a lot of military will end up buying a home here. And when they are here, they live in it. And then when they move PCS out, it becomes an investment property. So what we're ending up talking about is something that there are more people that are actually investors than they even realize that they're investors. And the 1031 exchange is, if they don't know about it, it's incredibly valuable to understand.
Yeah. Which will lead us into our guest for today. So today we have the regional account manager for McFerran Law. And if you're not familiar with McFerran Law, they've been a staple here in the Pacific Northwest, and they are a great resource for you. I mean, for us brokers, for clients. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Adam Grubbs from McFerran Law.
Good morning, Adam.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. We didn't have our little bumper that came up. What happened to our little bumper?
Oh, it was a picture. I didn't realize it was a picture today.
No, if anything, you reminded me I need to update my LinkedIn. If anything.
So how are we doing today, Adam? We are talking about 1031 exchanges. So why don't we start off and tell us, Adam, what is a 1031 exchange?
In layman terms, a 1031 exchange is it's something that gives us the ability to sell an investment property, and in lieu of paying capital gains, reinvest it into new investment property, so long as we meet the IRS guidelines of the tax code 1031. And so, if we're able to manage that process properly and reinvest it, we can potentially defer all of our gain liability into a new property. And I would remind everyone that we're using the word deferred. We're not avoiding, we're not getting rid of, we're not exempting, we're deferring. So those gains liabilities do get deferred into new property, but it allows you to kind of diversify your portfolio, or add new investment properties to your portfolio, or increase your cash flow, or even tap into the equity of that after the deferment. So
okay,
yeah.
So digging in. You have the next one, don't you?
I actually do. Well, I think you do, but I actually have a question that's because you mentioned the word capital gain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could, saying defer capital gain, what is a capital gain?
So capital gains are the gains incurred during the ownership of the property. And so, the simple way to calculate a capital gain liability would be to take your sales price and determine what's called exchange value, or net adjusted sales price. And we do that by subtracting our allowable closing costs. Oftentimes that's title and escrow, excise tax, and realtor commissions. And then from that, we deduce what our net adjusted sales price is after the sale occurs. And then what we would do is we subtract what is called our cost basis. Mm-hmm. And our cost basis can differ. I always defer to talking to your accountant to find out what your cost basis is. But that's going to be what you purchased the property for, plus capital improvements that were put into the property, minus your depreciation. So once you know your cost basis and your net adjusted sales price, the difference in that will equate to what your gain liability in that property is, or what you're going to pay taxes on, the amount you're going to pay taxes on.
Okay.
Adam, that sounds super easy.
Right? It's like as eyes go crossed, right? I mean, totally. So that just kind of means that, okay, it's not about what you just get. It's not about the number that you have in your hand. There's more to it than that. And talking to your tax accountant and kind of figuring out what that number really is, as far as what you're liable for in capital gains, is really the key. Right?
That's right. Yeah, a lot of people do think you pay capital gains or a tax on the actual income that you receive, which would be the proceeds from the sale, and that's not the case for capital gains. So
yeah. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about property gaining value, and then being able to, as an investor, continue to move along without having a bigger tax liability, or at least being able to not have to do that at the time, being able to reinvest. So we're talking about property to property in exchange. What kind of properties are actually eligible, from the property that you might own to the property that you might want to exchange it into? What are some of the things there?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, let's define investment property. We use the term investment a lot in real estate. We even use the term investor a lot in real estate. In terms of the tax code, a property to be deemed investment is a property that's held for investment purposes, for productive use in business or trade. if you will. And so, we have to first and foremost have a property that's deemed investment. And for it to be deemed investment, we've had to have held the property that we're selling for a period of time and shown it on our tax returns as an investment property, i.e. Taking depreciation on it, claiming the income that comes from it, if there is any, and claiming that on our tax return. And claimed it as investment, we can then reinvest it into new property. Now, a lot of people ask, well, if I have a duplex, do I have to buy a duplex? Or if I have a single family residence, do I have to buy a single family residence? No, you don't. You just have to buy real property that will be held for the investment purpose. Okay, so that means, yes, you can exchange from a commercial building into raw land. You could exchange from a single family residence into a fourplex. As long as whatever we're exchanging is for like, a lot of people confuse the term like kind, because like kind is some verbiage that's used in the tax code. What we like to say is like use. If you put it like use,
there you go.
And that's the best way to kind of to delineate it. So
yeah.
Okay.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah. So Adam, has the volume of the 1031s increased or decreased this year? And what do you believe has been like the cause of the increase or decrease?
I can't speak for other QIs, qualified intermediaries out there that handle 1031 exchanges. For us, if you just strictly look at the numbers, it's been about the same as the last couple of years. We often experience the same things you guys do in the seasonality, and when the market's hot, we're hot. And really that's equated to the fact that I know you guys had hit on the fact when you did your opening that you've done more 1031s this year than probably you have in the past. And that's because the market's so high and the value of these properties are so high. And so now you're getting investors that have been holding properties that understand that their property might be at its highest resale value now. And then, other things such as, do they want to reinvest in another state? Do they want to get in or out of certain counties? Those types of things when they're holding investment properties. So to answer your question, Steve, it's been about the same. It's just been a little more erratic because of obviously the pandemic and everything we're going through. There was a big lull there where everyone was in the unknown, similar to you guys in the real estate market, where you kind of on pause there for a little bit, early spring last year, and then once it opened up, it really opened up again, right? So yeah, we kind of feel the same trends you guys do. And so if you guys are busy out there, generally we're busy. And if you guys are slow out there, generally we're slow. Because we're, the market conditions of low inventory and things of that nature affect us the same way they affect you. Because ultimately what we're representing here are people buying and selling real estate in general, right? So
yeah. And hopefully just you mentioned something in there that would be interesting to get your take on. And if you even see anything inside of there, you mentioned that, it can go from other states to other counties. It could be flipping from commercial to residential or vice versa, different types of properties. Are you noticing any trends inside of the 1031s? Like noticing trends of moving out of state or to more rural areas, or to from going from commercial into resident? Like, are you seeing any trends?
I don't know if trends, I have a lot of conversations on a day-to-day basis, but I hear there's obviously a connection between Washington. Now let me preface this. Let me say, exchanges can happen anywhere in the country, any state in the U.S., right? And so you can sell a property in any state and buy a property in any state. Now, granted, we're here located in Western Washington, so majority of our business is driven by clientele in Western Washington, although we service people all over the country. And so what I hear is specific to the clientele of Western Washington. And we, to pick back up, we've always had a connection with states like Arizona or Las Vegas or Southern California, just because you get the snowbirds and people that like to spend time down there and stuff like that. So I would say, I have heard more people that are choosing to sell investment properties here and then reinvest somewhere that is, not Washington. Partially because of the stricter laws for landlord-tenant laws that are in place now. but also partially is investors that are doing 1031 exchanges oftentimes will buy properties in places ahead of where they're going to wind up, right? And so, if they're going to retire or they're going to spend more time in Florida or Arizona or Southern California, then they're going to look to buy properties there because one, it's easier to manage if that's the plan. And two, I won't get too far into it, but there are ways in which you can occupy the properties that you buy via 1031 exchange after held for a certain period of time. So I guess what I'm alluding to is the fact that they'll buy a house that they want to live in eventually, right? Or retire in eventually. So I hear a lot of that. Yeah. And then I would say the other trend I hear is a lot of people getting more creative, right? The inventory is limited. That's the case in a lot of places, unless you're going back to the Midwest or, something of that nature. And so, people have a deferment, a large capital gain liability, and they want to do their best to try to defer that. And so they might look into properties that typically they wouldn't look into as an investment property. But they will look into it and look into things such as, and Davina, you hit on this, what we call an improvement exchange or a reverse exchange or other types of exchange processes that are a little more cumbersome. But ultimately, the main goal is to defer the capital gain liability. And so they got to get a little more creative because the inventory is just limited out there and the competition is obviously hot and heavy. So, yeah.
Yes. And I like the fact that you hit on the, people doing exchanges and planning ahead as well. And obviously we don't have enough time to go deep into anything. So thank you for kind of skimming the surface, and you're probably creating a lot of curiosity here as well as like, what is that? What does that mean? But, when you're talking about the 1031 exchange, and there are some timelines that go along with that. So kind of going back a little bit, 1031 exchange is used for like-kind exchanges when you are selling a property that is quote unquote an investment property. So typically something that you're not living in, right? Then if you sell that property and you make money or you get money off of that property, it's possible that you could owe taxes on part of the money that you receive. So the 1031 exchange is a way to defer those taxes and by putting that money into another property.
Right.
So we're kind of just going like overview. Yeah. So there are some timelines, right? So if you're like, okay, I got an investment property I want to exchange and I want to do this, like what are the timelines that have to be abided by?
Yeah, so there's some hard and fast timelines within an exchange in the tax code. And I will say that overall, they're by far the hardest part of an exchange, or the most stressful part of an exchange. So in an exchange, we have 180 days total to complete the exchange. And that 180-day clock starts on the day that we close on our sale. And so we only have 6 months. Furthermore, that 180 days is broken into 2 time periods. The first time period is 45 days. So in the first 45 days, you can go out and acquire any property that you want in the whole United States unencumbered. You can make offers on and close on any property and complete your exchange. But the key is if by day 45 you have yet to complete your exchange, meaning you have yet to close on your replacement property, in order to get the additional 135 days, the IRS asks that you narrow down your search. And that's done by way of what's called identification. And the most common identification rule used is called the 3 property rule. And so you have to identify 3 properties on day 45, and those 3 properties that you identify are the only 3 properties available to you to complete the exchange for that additional 135 days. So a kind of brass tacks way to look at it is, the first 45 days, your inventory is unlimited. The last 135 days, you're limited to 3 properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That does seem like it could get kind of stressful, especially in a market where there's a lot of people looking to purchase. So
exactly. And to go back to your point, planning is key. I mean, the more planning you can do, the better when it comes to 1031 exchanges and investing, right? And how to set up the property to make sure it's being held as investment, even looking for your replacement property before you get into contract on the sale of your property. Planning is key, because that 45 days goes really fast. And if you're, quite frankly, if you're not in contract by day 45 on your replacement property, the likelihood of you completing exchange is much, much lower if you get past day 45 and you don't have a property in contract.
And when do those days start? The moment that the property closes, your own property closes, or?
Yep, that's right. So the clock starts on the day you close on your sale property.
Yeah. And then what are the ramifications if you can't meet the timelines? Because you've already sold the property now, right?
Yeah. So if you don't complete the timelines, then all your funds. That's a good point. In that, all the funds that come from a sale, they go into what's called an exchange account, and that's the role of the QI. And we can hit on that in a minute. So essentially, if you don't complete the exchange, meaning you don't purchase a replacement property, you just get refunded the proceeds plus interest, which might buy you a hamburger or two these days, and you just pay your taxes as if you just sold your property. So yeah, so the ramifications are you pay your capital gains. You don't get the option of deferring them. So
wow, okay. So you kind of mentioned like the role of the QI. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that comes about? Maybe even like maybe how the process of starting the 1031 exchange?
Yeah, absolutely. So a QI, a qualified intermediary, we call it a QI, but it stands for qualified intermediary, is required within an exchange. It's a third party that the exchanger or the client hires to act on behalf of the exchange. And so, they hold a couple different roles. One, to make sure that the proper documentation and paperwork, legal documentation and paperwork is acquired and procured and provided to the exchanger so that he can give that to his tax accountant and show that he completed an exchange to the IRS. But the main role, and the reason the role was created, was it's a third party that holds those funds for the purpose of the exchange and the exchange only. So that the money, the proceeds coming from the sale, isn't realized by the exchanger, meaning that it isn't received by the exchanger. Any money that's received by the exchanger is considered what's called constructive receipt. And as soon as you have constructive receipt of any of those funds, they become taxable. And so you need a third party to hold those funds while you're going through the process of completing the exchange. An exchange can be initiated at any point up until your closing of your sale. So when do you need to start an exchange? Again, like I said, planning's key. So the earlier the better, right? Just knowing you're doing an exchange so you can prepare and start your property search while you're going through the process of selling your property is always good. So I always advise, once you get into contract on your sale, once you have a buyer and you're signed around and you're in contract for your sale, is a good time to initiate the exchange. But in reality, ultimately, you have up until the day you close if you wanted to engage into an exchange. We don't like to wait that long. It just kind of muddies up the process if we wait till a day or two before. But can it be done? Yes. So there is no requirement that you have to identify that you're doing an exchange when you list or when you get into contract or anything of that nature.
Nice.
Another thing I'll add to that, if you guys are okay with it, for you brokers out there, there's no addendum that's required. If you look within the standard boilerplate MLS forms in Form 21, paragraph G, the verbiage for a 1031 exchange is already built into the Form 21, and so no addendums needed. You don't need to disclose anything as a 1031 exchanger, and so you as brokers can feel comfortable and confident to just go about the process of selling the property as you would without having to add any additional verbiage or anything to the contract in regards to the 1031 exchange if you're using the standard statewide MLS forms.
Okay.
Vivian?
I'm looking at, we always go round robin. I'm like, is it my turn? I thought I So, you had mentioned one of the things is, when we're talking about planning ahead and the difficulty that could be faced with, finding a property, so as we're in this market right now, I mean, do you see, or what do you see, that could be potential changes, or are there any potential changes that you see in the future or can predict for 1031s?
Right now, there's a lot of talk about 1031s, and so I expect there to be be a lot of talk about 1031s and capital gains in general, but I don't know what to expect exactly what those will be. What I do expect is to see an uptick, a continued uptick in the exchange interest, I will say, in interest in doing an exchange, primarily because we don't see any the inventory and the property value that we're experiencing now. I don't, we as an industry don't see that slowing down anytime soon. And so, with that, again, comes an uptick of 1031 exchanges, just because we have more investor clients wanting to do exchanges because their property values are so high. And then, like I stated earlier, I think a big change in the 1031 world for me will be that you're going to get a lot of people that become more creative in trying to accomplish a 1031 exchange, because they're limited by the inventory and obviously the competition out there. And so they might look at doing more, like I said, improvement exchanges. That's where you buy a property that needs some improvements done to it, and you're able to use exchange funds for it. Or reverse exchanges. A reverse exchange is where you're able to tie up a property essentially before you sell your property. And so I see more clients looking at other avenues to arrive at the same goal that typically maybe they wouldn't have looked at in the future. So.
Adam, this is really interesting. It's really interesting if you're interested in 1031. Like, this conversation isn't going to be for everybody, but for the people who, like anybody out there that is interested in 1031s, what you're saying is really good and engaging, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions and a lot of questions about it. It's not something that most people do on an everyday basis because it's such a specific sector that is looking for those 1031s. One of the things, though, is when we think about it, 1031, we're trying to defer some taxes and other things. So the question, I think, naturally comes up: what kind of costs are involved? First, what kind of costs are involved for the investor to do a 1031 exchange? And then, are there any cost liabilities? So they have a specified period of time that they can find a new property. Does the 1031 add any, is it at all cumbersome on them purchasing another property? So are there costs that the seller of the property they want to buy is going to do or have to take on? Or are there any time constraints that end up being on the selling property or the property they're purchasing?
Yeah, so first and foremost, all costs are incurred by the exchanger and the exchanger only. There would never be any costs incurred by anyone else involved in the real estate transaction. As far as costs, I mean, the best way to look at it is the costs are minimal in that they're generally around another escrow fee for the exchanger. And that's to complete a whole forward exchange. Now, you can get into multiple legs where you're selling one property and buying 3 properties, but to keep it simple, it's probably going to be around another escrow fee of cost. Every QI is going to be different out there, but for us, that's what it is. And our costs are generally about that. They might shift a little bit based on the fact pattern of each individual exchange and what we're trying to accomplish. But there's no real, looking at it from an exchanger's perspective, other than, so we get paid per transaction, right? And so every transaction is what we call a leg. And so the sale of the property you're selling is leg number one, and the purchase of the property you're buying is leg number two. And so each leg is going to have its own like flat fee, if you will. And so really, if you engage in an exchange and you don't complete the exchange, you don't find a replacement property, in reality, you're only going to be out the cost of leg number one, right? Which is half of an escrow fee, if you will, for the attempt in doing an exchange. So it's really minimal. And that's really the only cost associated with it. Really, where the stress isn't in the fiduciary part of it. The stress is in the finding the property to replace it with, right? Mm-hmm. I think you hit on a good point when you first got into that question. As a consumer, if you own real estate that you're holding as investment, the most important thing I can say to you is make sure you're I don't want to say planning, because you might not know what you're going to do in a year or two from now, but make sure you understand how you're holding that property and what options that gives you, right? Because again, we do have to hold this real estate for a period of time and show it as investment in order to do an exchange. And it's really important on how we're showing that on our tax returns. I get a lot of calls where people call me and they have a property where they have a large gain liability, but because they've chosen to claim it a specific way on their tax returns over the last year or two, maybe to have a better benefit to them for that specific annual year, it keeps them from being able to do an exchange, right? And so I would say to the consumers out there, just, if you have properties and they're investment properties, whether they're rentals or raw land or whatever they might be, just make sure you're aware of how you need to hold that property to potentially defer those gains in the future if you ever want to, right? And so, if that's a call to me, absolutely. I mean, you can call me anytime. I talk to a ton of people on a daily basis that aren't even close to selling their property yet. They're 6, 8, 12 months out from selling their property, but they're calling me and asking me about an exchange and what they need to do to properly set up the ownership. And we won't get into ownership, but ownership structure is very important too, in that, when we do an exchange, the vested party or the taxpayer on a property has to be the same from the sale to the purchase. So if you start talking about owning a property in an LLC with other members and things of that nature, well, we need to have a conversation, a year beforehand to make sure we're changing the structure of that ownership so we can properly meet the goals of every person involved in that transaction of that sale. So things of that nature.
You're saying knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power in this case. Yes. Yeah. Planning is key. Knowledge is power. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it's, Adam, it sounds like you could really dive deep in like the scenarios and like your specifics when we're talking about doing the 1031 exchange, especially if you got multiple properties involved. If there's someone out there who's looking at doing an exchange or wants more information, how would they contact you? What's the best way to get hold of you?
The phone. If I'm awake, I'm available. So you can reach me directly at the office. I can give you the number now. It's the line to me is 253-284-3814. And I always kind of defer to the phone. I think we're better served talking through this stuff as opposed to trying to email it. I get emails all the time asking me questions, and ultimately I'm like, call me. Let's talk about it. I can't answer this in an email because, like you said, just like in real estate, every transaction is different. And we have to go over kind of the fact pattern, the details of their specific situation to be able to determine what the best route for them is. So call me anytime. And this is what I do. I talk 1031s all day, every day. So I don't have any problem having that discussion with anyone. Okay.
Well, definitely. We got the phone number down. We will put that in the comment section as well. So, wrapping up, Jurgen, Davina, we have any other questions for Adam?
I actually do. I have a quick question because Adam, you also McFerran Law has also the McFerran Institute, which is a lot of education, clock hours for the real estate professionals. And are there any classes that are that people can take, agents can take that? I know that there was a 1031 at one time. Are you guys doing those right now virtually?
So we are offering at McFerran University, is what it's called, and go to mcferranu.com, and you can see a list of all our offerings. We have transitioned from live class offerings to now live class offerings via Zoom, right, as opposed to in person. And we do have a bevy of our courses available. I think we have 25 to 30 courses that we're approved to teach. I think roughly 15 of them are available right now via the Zoom platform. And we'll be adding more in the first quarter of next year. To answer your question specifically, the 1031 exchange one is not one that's available right this moment. But for you brokers out there looking to get clock hour classes, there is a ton of other topics out there, including your usual core and things of that nature. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Kind of a curveball question for you.
Yeah.
Because it's investment and you have to look at each one individually. If somebody has an ADU that they've been renting either like a room or a part of the house or even a separate unit on the property, or let's say it's like a duplex that they occupy one side, they're renting out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it may depend. I mean, are those eligible for 1030? Are they possibly eligible for 1031 exchanges?
Yeah, absolutely. They're called a blended exchange, in which you can exchange out of that portion of investment held real estate. So let's take a duplex, for example. That's a great example. So if we had a duplex, and let's assume that both sides are exactly the same in square footage and things of that nature. So long as we've been claiming that other half as investment on our tax returns, then we could sell that property. We could claim the 121 exemption, which I'm throwing something out there, but the 120, I'll let you guys talk more about that. You could claim the 121 exemption on the side in which you claimed as your primary residence. And then you could do an exchange on the 50% side that you held as investment and exchange from that into a new property. Sure.
Yes. So it kind of depends. You have to look at it, but even if it's a property and you are getting income and claiming income off that property, there could be even a blended part of it. That's cool. That's
sure. Yeah, and that would work with an ADU. It would work with a home in which maybe you've rented out 20% of it, a room downstairs or something of that nature. It really kind of boils down to how has it been treated and claimed on your tax return. So again, back to the planning. How are we itemizing these things on our tax returns when we're doing our tax returns, right? So.
I learned things today.
Yes.
Every day.
This is good. Awesome. Well, thank you, Adam, for getting up early and joining us this morning and enlightening us on the 1031 exchange. And we also have our trivia. I don't know if you want to stay on for our trivia question. I'm sure you know the answer to this question. Christy is in the back and she normally pops in. Are you coming in, Christy, for our trivia?
Hey, everyone. Hey. So today's trivia question is, what is the most common type of 1031 exchange? Is it A, simultaneous exchange, B, forward delayed exchange, C, construction exchange, or D, reverse exchange? Do you guys have your guesses?
I'm guessing between A and D.
Anywhere in between those two. All right.
To include.
Any last minute guesses before we give the answer out? No. All right. Well, the answer is B, forward delayed exchange. We actually had a few people get the answer right on the back end. So congrats, guys. Good job.
Which one is the forward delayed exchange? Is it the pretty standard one?
Yeah. So I mean, it was commonly referred to in old times as delayed exchange, because initially when exchanges came about, they were simultaneous exchanges, which are very few and far between now. You very rarely see a simultaneous exchange. And then it's equated now to a forward exchange. So a forward exchange or a delayed exchange or a forward delayed exchange are all the same thing, but it's by far the most common.
Oh, very awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for hopping in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
And out there, you learned something.
We did. I'm more curious now that I'm calling you, Adam. We're gonna talk a little bit more. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Adam,
Have a great
for coming on. We appreciate it.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Man, that is a great resource and a ton of information.
It was. There's a lot more to dive into, definitely there on that, just to scratch at the surface.
Yep.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things. It's not necessarily for everybody, but when you need to know it, I mean, man, first and foremost, having a good resource for it, but to understand at least on a cursory level of what it is, really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned, even early on, is that some investors don't consider themselves investors because they're in a position where they bought their home and then they had to move, and now they've had this rental property for however many years that now they've been claiming as now an investment property, and then now the market's where it is, and they're thinking about selling it, and not even thinking about if they're going to buy something else. Or they can buy something else and actually utilize a 1031 potentially and not have to pay any capital gains on the monies that they make.
Well, even people, have rented a room or like the basement or something in their home, and do they really consider themselves investors?
Right. Right. Where they could exchange a portion of that depending on how they've reported it on their taxes in the past is the big key there as well too. So
absolutely.
Yep. So that's good. Lots to think about there. I like it.
So Steve, we got a few things going on. Is that right?
Well, you know what? It's kind of a short week this week, and we got Christmas on us. We've got it's just going to be a short week. It's Christmas week, and not a lot going on other than another talent talk coming into you next week, Monday, but we do have a few things. We have our virtual John L. Scott kettle for the Salvation Army. Yeah. I believe we've got that in the link. So if you have the opportunity, we can't ring the bell anymore due to COVID-19. So we actually got a virtual kettle that we're trying to get to. We've got a goal for $5,000. So if you have the opportunity, please swing by. There is still a need out there for folks who just need help out. So
the need this year is bigger than it's been in any year past, and many who are going to listen are feeling that need themselves. Salvation Army is there to serve those who need the assistance, and if you're in a position where maybe you've been blessed with a little bit extra that your heart is, you're being called to share a little, it'd be great if you'd be able to contribute, because it all goes into the Salvation Army, and all of these go back in the local community to help.
Yes. Thank you, Jurgen. And other than that, it's kind of a short week. So I think that's it. All right. I mean,
yeah. Next week, we will have a guest on. We'll be talking about disclosure law. So when we talk about, do I, as a seller or an agent, like what do you know and what does a seller know and what do they need to disclose and what do they legally have to disclose or not disclose? So we're going to be talking a little bit about disclosure law on next Monday's Talent Talk. And next Monday will be our very last Talent Talk of the year. I believe that will be episode 100. So, whoa.
Yeah.
So, wow.
The disclosure part, I mean, even understanding why there are disclosure laws, and then if you're a buyer or if you're a seller, understanding what that means inside of the process. And, just because there are disclosure laws from a buyer standpoint, understanding what that actually means, and that there's a huge amount of due diligence beyond that goes on the buyer. So not some people feel like the disclosure is everything, but it's only really the start.
Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of what you know and what we're going to talk about this. We're going to dive into this on Monday. It'll be some fun and thought-provoking conversation. So,
all right, disclosure laws next Monday. The 100th episode of Talent Talk.
Oh my gosh!
Wow,
100 episodes. That's
started from COVID.
Yeah,
when COVID hit.
I feel like I'm going to birth myself here. I don't know.
It's really fun. We've had a lot of fun this year for sure. So here we go. Well, Christmas is on Friday. So any fun Christmas plans?
You know what?
Christmas shopping?
Done Christmas shopping.
Have you started your Christmas shopping?
Yeah, kind of.
Christy, are you done with your Christmas shopping? She's in the back saying, yeah, she's done.
Yeah.
All right.
I think this year is going to be really, for us, is going to be just about that close family.
Mm-hmm.
But, oftentimes it's kind of spread outward, and this is going to be an interesting year, but not a bad year to really be focused on. I don't know. I know sometimes I get so diverted on all the other things going on in life. Sometimes the family that I'm with every day, I kind of don't give as much attention to. And it's going to be kind of nice to be able to focus that attention right in the home, at least for me.
Yeah, we'll have a quiet one too. And it seems like all of our events this year that we celebrate our birthdays and everything have been pretty quiet and intimate. I do know a few families though that do have relatives that they're going to be visiting. And so they're actually in the midst of quarantining right now. So they're like 2 weeks prior, they've been quarantining for a week so that they can actually go and visit family safely. So I guess it's too late now to try to do that, but you have to really plan it. The people have been planning ahead to actually have their family gatherings. So,
Steve, anything on your side?
No, just small and quiet. That's how this year's been. Just kind of small, quiet, and staying socially distanced.
Yeah. And Christy's just gonna be working on her baking. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to say goodbye on episode 99. Get ready to welcome in episode 100 and a brand new year to follow.
Yep.
So happy holidays to you and enjoy your Friday. And we're going to go out with a big Be Bold on 3.
Yep.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Be bold.
Bye, you guys. Be safe. Enjoy.